really provide that and encourage the patients and try to explain to them why it's important to vaccinate their children. It will make a difference not only to their children's health, but when they come in contact with other children in the community, at school, friends, etc. And thank you for listening. And I would like also really to thank the industry that really not only sponsored the event, but there's some people who work in this industry who really have the heart to actually make a difference when it comes to children. So I would like to extend that thanks to them also. Thank you.
Many of you may not even, well, be nurses in that you have, but when I've gone into hospitals, people have wondered, what is it that you had? And I'm asked that all the time, and I had polio. And I had it when I was 5 years old. It was like 1950. And they just don't even know. They don't even know what that was. I was 5 years old. I just had my 5th birthday. I was waiting to enter kindergarten, and I had the flu, or we thought it was the flu, and that was about over. And one day, and as I remember it, it didn't feel too good, and so I was laying on the couch in the front room, and finally, they had the doctor come, and as I remember, he did a few things like move my legs, move my arms, and they were stiff. I mean, I had been perfectly active, very active child. I don't remember much after that, but I was told that I then went to the hospital, and they gave me a spinal tap. I don't remember that either. The only thing I remember is probably about 1 or 2 weeks later. I mean, so I was kind of comatose, I guess, and waking up and seeing my mom and dad standing by my bed, completely in surgical gear and face masks and everything, just to see me. I remember very little of that. And then the next thing I remember was some days later, waking up in the middle of the night, and a nurse was sitting next to me eating an apple. And I said, I want a bite of that. And apparently that was the first time I'd been awake or anything like that and showed any interest in food or anything. So they were quite happy about that. And the next thing, they had to take me. I was in La Crosse, which was in Wisconsin, a town over by the river, and we went to Madison, which is the capital, which is more in the center of the state. And I went there, and I was there for about 6 months. At the end of being sick, the sickness was now over, and now what I had was my paralysis. And I was completely paralyzed. My parents would come up on weekends because they had my brother, and my mother was pregnant, and they came up, I guess, on weekends, and they came to me, and I said, I have something to show you. Oh, what's that? And they said, you got to promise to put it back when I'm done. And I was just like this in bed. And they said, okay. And I let my head go like that. And I had basically my muscle, I was paralyzed, but my muscles were all stiff. But I was like that, but I couldn't straighten it back up. But that was the first thing. So then they had to straighten my head back up. So that was the first thing that I did. And then for the next few weeks, I went through putting shoes on again for the first time and many things like that. So I came back home, I guess, and it was August when I went there, so I was May, June, something like that. I was 5 then, so then I became 6, and I went to a school in my hometown, which was for kids that had polio and other things, and there were like 2 rooms of kids, and we had a lot of other diseases, but I went like that, and we had physical therapy every day. When I was 7, I went to Warm Springs, Georgia. I got out of the hospital in Madison, and then when I was just 5 and a half, and at 7, I went to Warm Springs, Georgia, and had some surgeries, and got some braces and arm rests and things like that, so I could learn to feed myself. And then I went back and kept going to school, and then again, when I was 9, I went back down there again for some more surgery and more fixing up of braces and stuff like that. So all this time I was going to the different schools, but I was going back to the hospital to have the surgery to correct things or help me strengthen certain muscles or things like that. But it was all that sort of surgery. And then about when I was 13, still going to the same school, I went to a hospital down in Milwaukee and had some more surgery. And then I went to high school, and again, because I was in a wheelchair and everything, and the public high school was 3 floors, no elevator, and you went up and down and up and down and up and down. But the Catholic high school right nearby was just about as far away as the public high school from my home. I was able to have all my freshman classes on the first floor and my sophomore classes on the second floor and junior and senior classes on the third floor. And so I went to school there, and they just took me upstairs in the morning and brought me down in the afternoon. And then I went away to college in Southern Illinois, and when I did that, I had to have an attendant who we hired a student who was my attendant, shared my room, took care of me in the morning and in the night, and helped me get back and forth to classes or with other kids on the floor. So I did that for 5-6 years because I went to graduate school there also. And then I decided that rather than at the end of getting a master's degree, that I would go on to the University of Florida and work on a PhD. So we went down there and did the same, hired someone to be my attendant, and who was also a student, and went through my PhD degrees. And at the end of that, then I did the usual checking all the different places, who'd like to hire me, and ended up coming out here and working for Boeing. I worked for Boeing here about 23 years, yeah, and then retired back in 2001. And Sarah's been my caregiver out here for almost 15 years now. I had other caregivers out here before Sarah, but Sarah was and is now. But so I've gone through my whole life since being 5 years old, handicapped, and I'm kind of getting the post-polio now, so some of the things that I could do before I'm getting now I can't do now that I could do before, as muscles are weakening and that sort of thing. So it's just people don't know about polio, and I mean, you people do, but other people don't, and they think, well, that's one I'm going to give my child a vaccination for that, and this is what happens. And if they would know that could happen, and it can, they would want to use the vaccination. And it's something that's kind of down and not very prevalent, but it comes up every once in a while, and the kids just don't know it, and all of a sudden, bam, they've got it. And I'm probably one of the lucky ones, because when I was in the hospitals and that, I saw lots of people with iron lungs and things like that weren't going to make it anywhere near as far as, I mean, I almost died, but I came through. But there are people that did die, and that sort of thing could go on. And so I'm here to tell anybody that wants to ask any questions about it. But when there's the baby and they want to know, do you want to have your vaccination? Polio is certainly one of the ones you should have all of them, but polio is one that is kind of forgotten, but I think people should remember. And I guess that's my story. Thank you.
I'd like to end this segment of our talk tonight with a quote from Helen Keller, who was a meningitis survivor. "I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do something that I can do. I say if infants and children had a choice and a voice, they would choose vaccination over illness and death. However, they don't. So we have to be that voice, the voice of science, fact, reason, and protection of life and health. Vaccinate." That's from Helen Keller. The impact you have on your patients cannot be overstated. We thank you for what you do every day and ask you to always remember the miracle of vaccines. Thank you.